Chapter 14, Pebbles. Tomas fell asleep without eating, nor did he dream. After sundown the wind blew harder, tossing the waves high up the beach and rattling the limbs of the elephant trees. From time to time Miguel went out into the night, and straining to stand against the gale, winched the shark above the rising tide. Around midnight the rain fell. Torrents emptied on the desert, sea, and island. The dry, hard land, which could not absorb the water fast enough, sent it cascading down the volcano, over rocks, into pools and out again. The arroyo filled and roared like a mountain of bees. The long parched plants responded to the deluge, thirstily lifting the winter rain up with their stems cell by cell. The stalks of the cholla and organ pipe cacti expanded. The leaf buds on acotillo began to grow as the water flowed upward into twig and limb. The surplus was stored in reservoirs as the plants miraculously planned ahead for another drought. Miguel awakened Tomas about midnight. "I'm worried about the shark," he said. "The sea is very rough and high." Tomas rolled to his feet and followed Miguel into the storm. The waves were pounding the huge fish and straining the lines that held it. Using the lifting power of the waves and ignoring the stinging rain, the two managed to pull it up higher on the beach. "And now the boat," said Miguel, splashing into the sea. He and Tomas waded into the waves until they could see the bucking, tossing pongas. They were riding the tumultuous sea like wood chips, as the tough little boats were designed to do. Shivering with cold, Tomas and Miguel dashed back to the snug, sleeping palapa, his hands shaking. Miguel laid a few dry sticks near the door and lit a fire. The palapa brightened and warmed. Tomas put on a dry shirt, huddled close to the flames, and listened to the rain pound the palm thatch roof. "Not a drop is coming through," he said, shaking his head in the wonder of it. "It's amazing that a tree can give us a waterproof shingle. Ramon says the thatch palm is the greatest gift God ever gave to a fisherman," Miguel said. "We made it into walls and ceilings and fences and clothes and brooms and dishes and beds, and toothpicks and forks and fish nets and sleeping mats," Tomas went on. "It does seem like our best friend." The wind hit the palm leaf home and it shuddered, leaned, then quickly recovered, as if to prove Tomas's words. When he was well warmed, he pulled a blanket over himself and lay down. The rain thundered on and on. The arroyo hummed and plant parts popped and crackled as they grew. The fresh odor of wetted earth filled his nostrils, and he dropped off to sleep. In the morning the rain was still torrential. Miguel rekindled the fire and pounded tortillas into shape. By the time he and Tomas had eaten, the storm had begun to abate. The drumming was replaced by pattering, the pattering by dripping. Miguel and Tomas sat in the doorway, drinking coffee and watching the rain ease up. "Miguel," Tomas said after a time, "what did you and Grandpa decide to do when you and he went home and talked? Is everything all right?" Miguel stirred the fire. "Ramon will not pay rent," Miguel answered softly. Tomas blinked in surprise and sat straight up. "What will the oficiales do if he doesn't pay rent?" he asked. "Will they put us in jail?" "We won't fish." Tomas was not sure he had heard correctly. "We won't fish?" He put down his coffee cup. "That is correct." "What will we do?" Tomas felt a numbness come over him. Fishing to his family was as essential as the sun. It must be. "We won't fish?" he repeated fearfully, and saw the sun fall from the sky. He tried to think of something to say, but could not find the words to mouth. Holding his head, he stared out at the rain and remembered his Christmas gift to his grandfather. "Miguel," he said at last, "you and Grandpapa can go on fishing. I caught the shark so we could pay the rent. It will take care of it for many months, and then I'll catch another." "It's not just the rent, Tomas," Miguel said, his voice low and even. "The fish are disappearing. We work and get very few pesos. And Ramon is not well. His leg bothers him a lot. And that is not all. The real reason, Tomas," Miguel went on quietly, "is that he will not pay the bribes he would have to pay to stay on the island. He would rather not fish." Tomas sat tall. He saw a volcano erupting in the center of his beloved family. It was spewing everyone's life into the sky, his mother's, his grandmother's, and little Maria's, as well as Miguel's and Ramon's and his own. The Torres' ponga would not go to sea again. The Evinrude would not roar. The island, the volcano, the birds, and the fish-adorned reef were all being swallowed up in the volcanic fire and smoke. "Oh no, Miguel," Tomas cried. "No! You and I can fish with rod and reel from the ponga, marlin and tuna, bring good prices." A wind wailed over the palapa and screamed off through the cacti. It ratatouilled the mesquite limbs and bent the elephant trees. Miguel did not answer. I worked well with you when we landed the shark, didn't I? We can do that every day. I am pretty good at rod and reel fishing, and I really can spearfish. Miguel rubbed his cold hands together and held them over the fire, as if rubbing would produce the miracle needed to help them. When the chill was gone, he folded his arms and stuck his hands into his warm armpits. Your teacher, Señor Fuertes, he said, came to the casa yesterday. He talked a long time about you. There's a future for you. He and Ramon think you should go to school. No, said Tomas. No, I can't. Señor Fuertes said you could work in the new laboratory in the government high school. He said you knew a lot about the reefs and fish, and some day you could be very helpful to the fishermen. Tomas took a deep breath. The words of his teacher set him to dreaming again. He was sailing to new worlds with Charles Darwin. He was in a laboratory with Madame Curie. He was diving deep with Uncle Diaz to study the fish of the Sea of Cortez, and he yearned for this. A flash of lightning seemed to rip open a cloud, and the thunder boomed ferociously. Tomas crossed himself and looked up at the sky. I can't do it. Why not, Tomas? Who will earn the money for the family? I will work for Victorio. I will take the gringos out to fish. He will be glad to have me. He is always glad to keep another commercial fisherman off the water, more fish for his clients. No, Miguel, Tomas said. I'm not going on to school. You and I will fish. We will take care of the family. Ramon wants you to go to school. Life is changing in Laredo. The Torreses must change too. Like the plants and animals on this earth, we change or die. He asked me to tell you that you must be the one to go to school and help us all. I can't, said Tomas. Why not, Miguel said. Why are you saying this? I prayed for help. We all prayed for help. I prayed to let Ramon live out his life on the island. See what good it does? My prayer was answered. That's good. You should be happy. I made a bargain. With the devil? It seems like it. I promised to become a fisherman if I could catch this shark. I see, said Miguel, shaking his head. Yes, that does make a difference. Miguel's shoulders slumped. He understood the seriousness of making a promise to the gods and saints. The fire sent up a white coil of smoke and went out. You should not have done that. But I did. Tomas stared up at the shipless volcano. Miguel lowered his head and traced a feather serpent in the sand. I must be a fisherman, Tomas said. Together we can do it. Will you help me? Miguel wiped out the serpent. No, I can't. His voice was soft and low. I saw Victorio before I came out here. He hired me. Then I'll fish alone, Tomas said, frightened but determined. Miguel traced another serpent in the sand. Tomas, your decision is right. I am glad you made it. I became a fisherman when I was your age, and I've never regretted it. It's a good life. I know it, replied Tomas. He put his chin in his hands and looked out on the blue, green, and violet sea. The rain is over, Miguel said after a while. We have a lot of work before us. Tomas stepped briskly into the clean, fresh air. The egret was back from the peninsula of Baja, where it had retreated during the storm. The pelicans were diving for fish, the vultures soaring. Tomas untied the shark and sharpened his knife. Tomas? Yes? Want to go play with the sea lions tomorrow if our work is done? Sure, Miguel. I have a friend among them that I want you to meet. She can balance a ball on her nose. She rollicks and plays. Want to see her? Sure, Miguel. A dark wind cloud swept in from the sea and covered the volcano. Tomas watched it with apprehension, for it looked like a huge dark bull. Its eyes were wide holes. A large tongue coiled out of its mouth. Texcalipoca, he said. I've made my decision. Go away. No more deals. Tomas went back to his shark. It was more than 10 feet long, silvery and sleek. The pointed teeth that grew out of the skin pores gleamed in the sunlight, and the hammerhead shone like an armory of swords. The jaws were still, the eyes milky white, the nostrils closed. Now even your jaws are dead, Tomas thought, and taking a grip, attempted to turn the shark over. Miguel, he called, I can't even budge this thing. Once I planned to carry it over my head into the plaza. How could I have ever thought I could do that? You were young, answered Miguel. Tomas thought about it. Miguel? Yes? Did you know there is no golden ship on the top of the volcano? Yes, he said softly. I climbed it when I was 14. Miguel smiled sadly, and getting down on his knees to begin the butchering, instead rocked back on his heels. But it was a beautiful ship, wasn't it? I wouldn't have missed it for anything, Tomas said, as he walked the length of the shark, from its head to its tail and back again. He paused to count the gill slits, 5 on each side. He put his finger into the spiracle, an external opening in the windpipe that is part of the primitive breathing apparatus of the shark. He traced the hearing organs with his finger, then the lateral lines down each side. Finally he stood before the head, and lifting the upper jaw, propped it open with driftwood. A shark is really mysterious, he said to himself. Maybe my son will go to school and find out how they came to be. Tomas gave a last owning to his fish knife and dropped to his knees beside Miguel to help him remove the fins and the tough, valuable skin. They worked well together, sensing each other's movements and intentions without wasting words. In a few moments they were joined by the gulls and pelicans, who cried for tidbits and got them. It was well into the afternoon before the shark was gutted, boned, and filleted. Miguel cut the jaw from the head and dragged it to Tomas. For you, he said. Clean it and put it in the sun to dry. It will remind you of the days from the Sea of Cortez, when the greatest fishing grounds in the world. Tomas towed the enormous jaws to the dike, and taking out his knife, began to patiently clean them. It was almost nightfall before he asked Miguel to help him carry the jaws to the drying arena behind the palapa. There he propped the soft white cartilage wide open with sticks and stepped back to admire it. It stood 3 feet tall and spread 4 feet wide. The 5-inch saw-edged teeth were pearly white. Before daylight, Miguel began loading the boats with rods and reels and pans. What are you doing? Tomas asked. Pack up everything. We must be off the island today. We'll be fined if we don't leave. You mean this home is no longer ours? That's what I mean. Get your clothes, your shells, everything. Tomas watched Miguel's grim face as he packed up a mat and carried it to the boat. He joined him, moving like a robot as he stowed chairs and blankets, water jugs, and gasoline cans. He helped Miguel load the heavy shark nets and the 3 enormous bags of salted hammerhead shark meat, all that remained of Tomas's dream. He picked up a piece and laughed at the little boy who thought he was going to carry the shark whole into the plaza while the mission bells rang. At noon, Miguel cooked 2 large shark steaks while Tomas made the tortillas. They carried their food to the top of the dike, sat down, and looked over the sapphire blue water and the rain-washed Baja Mountains. Aguila, the sea eagle, flew overhead carrying a stick as a present for his mate. At least he doesn't have to move, Tomas said. Wait until the oficiales find out he's not paying rent, said Miguel. Then he'll be moved too. Tomas looked at his uncle and lapsed into grief so deep it pained his throat. After a silence, Miguel wiped his mustache and stood up. Now for the treat, he said, forcing a grin. It's time to show you my sea lion, Tomas. Bring your mask. They took off in the little punga, for it was not burdened with as many possessions. Tomas was in the helm, Miguel in the bow. They sped out of the cove, then northward along the island shore. The air was fresh, and the shoulders of the volcano were changing from red to green before their eyes as millions of well-watered leaves popped open. Tomas watched the birds soaring and diving and smiled. The life of a fisherman was a good one. He was going to be happy. It was almost 2 p.m. The sports fishermen were long gone, and the sea belonged to Tomas, Miguel, the fish, and the birds. Suddenly, as if it were coming from some other person inside him, he called on the Lady of Guadalupe and Quetzalcoatl again. Please don't let me be sorry, he said silently. At the north end of the island, he steered the boat around a sculpture garden of huge sea-carved rocks. One stood alone like a fluted castle, another had been hammered by the water into the likeness of an old man and his dog. Still others were birds and dragons. Tomas thought these massive images were the gods that the creatures of the Sea of Cortez worshipped. If so, he thought, they were the nice ones that did not ask for promises and sacrifices. He made a tight turn around the old man and the dog, sending spray into the air, then straightened his course and sped past the stony castle. On top of this, the sea eagles lived. The male and the female were standing on their stick nest, looking out over their vast kingdom, 10 square miles of gorgeous blue sea. Aren't they a noble pair? Tomas pointed to the regal birds perched 200 feet above the sea. Miguel did not answer. He was gauging the distance to the rocky shore. Pull in by the black wall, Tomas. Miguel indicated a 60-foot-high cliff of folded lava that had solidified in the sea and been worn smooth as steel by 100,000 years of waves. On the dark rocks, as if at its base lounged a herd of 14 sea lions. 5 were huge bulls, each weighing almost 500 pounds. The females were somewhat smaller, but very large animals nevertheless. Small external ears lay tight against their pointed heads. Long, stiff whiskers stood out from their noses. Their hind feet bent forward as they sat, another characteristic that distinguished them from their cousins, the seals, whose feet stretched out behind them. I would like to know why mammals that have to breathe air go live in the sea, Tomas said. Someone must know, and I would like to find him and ask that question. When Tomas steered the ponga toward the herd, the sea lions emitted low, plaintive howls. As the boat drew nearer, they became agitated, and their voices changed to the sound of geese honking and dogs barking. The boat touched the rocks. The largest bull, whose head was held high, pushed on his front flippers and rose to his full height. He honked at Miguel and Tomas, twisting his head up and to the right. Then he flopped into the sea. 5 other members of the herd followed him. After a minute or so they surfaced and looked at the fishermen, one of whom, Miguel, was staring at the shore. "Come here, Pebbles," he called to a sea lion still lounging on the rocks. He held up a piece of shark meat. "Come play with me." Sea swells rose, carried the boat up the wall, then down again. Pebbles, a youngster of the year, born only last May, lifted her head from her bed of dark green seaweed and watched Miguel with large, soft eyes. She moved toward him. A chorus line of Sally Lightfoot crabs danced away from her as swiftly and silently as bird shadows. "Come, Pebbles." The young sea lion sniffed. Her whiskers twisted as she picked up the odor of fish. 2 more seals dove into the sea, spiraled to the surface, and grinned at the fishermen. Miguel took off his shirt and pants, put on the mask, and slipped into the dark, deep water, holding a piece of shark meat in one hand. "Toss the ball when I tell you to, Tomas. It's under the seat." Miguel breaststroked quietly toward the rookery. The bulls honked. Pebbles looked from Miguel to her kind, then back to Miguel. She honked to him, pushed with her hind feet, and sliding over the rocks, splashed into the sea. She came up 6 inches from Miguel's face. "Good girl," he said, and fed her the fish. Miguel dove. Pebbles dove. Tomas stood up on the seat to see deeper into the clear water. Miguel and the young seal rolled and tumbled like terns on the wing. Miguel popped up for air. "Throw me the ball," he called. Tomas gave it a toss, and Miguel caught it as Pebbles lifted herself until most of her long, sleek body was out of the water. She honked. Miguel threw the ball at her. Miraculously, she caught it on her nose, and balancing it with her whiskers, swam in circles. With a honk, she tossed it back to Miguel. He caught it and swam to the boat. "Want to play, Tomas?" Miguel called. Tomas tied the boat to a rock, slipped out of his clothes, and dived in. Miguel tossed him the ball. He tossed it to Pebbles. She caught it, balanced, and spun it with her long whiskers, and climbed up onto the rocks. She flipped it back to Miguel. "Here, Tomas," Miguel said, handing him the mask. "Put this on. See the most beautiful show of all." Treading water, Tomas pulled on Uncle Diaz's mask, while Miguel lured Pebbles into the water again. He dove. She dove. Tomas dove. The underwater world at the Black Cliff was a sea theater where every colorful coral and brilliant reef fish of the central Baja coast performed. Against a curtain of bright coral fans and gold, blue, green, purple, and orange fish swam Miguel and Pebbles side by side. He stroked her nose, she rolled over. He stroked her belly, she did a back dive and twirled into a playful dance. Rolling and spinning, she sped down into the darkness, then up again, like a silver fishing spinner, outlined as she was in bubbles. She burst out of the water, dove in, then out. Miguel and Tomas watched until they had to come up for air. When Miguel swam to the boat for more fish, Pebbles climbed in beside him, honking and talking. After she had eaten, she back-flipped into the sea, and snapping up the ball again, returned to the rocks. She tossed it to Miguel, who was almost 50 feet away. Then she lay down. "That's the end of the show," said Miguel. "Did you like it?" "Oh, yes," Tomas said. "A fisherman's life is very special. Who else can play with a sea lion?" They spoke no more until they were around the point of sculptured rocks. "Who is she?" Tomas asked, leaning toward Miguel. "I met her a week ago," he answered. "She wanted to play. I didn't teach her. What do you think about my charging gringos to bring them out here to see her perform? I could make quite a bit of money." "No, Miguel," Tomas said sharply. "Don't do that to her. She will disappear like the sharks and fish." Miguel ran his fingers through his hair. "I know," he said. "That's how I figured it. You and I will keep her for ourselves." As they entered the cove, Tomas was humming. He had never seen anything as beautiful as Pebbles, and she was not even a dream, she was real.